That leads us into our eighth top 10 list. It is right field, and this is it for position players,
Yeah,
as we have done all the other parts of the diamond. We've done catcher, first base, second base, shortstop, third base, left field, and center field. And yeah, we have right field this week, and then
which
we got
is
the two pitcher lists following, which is which is fun. We know we're gonna be talking about some really cool numbers with all three of these upcoming lists, because right field is pretty stacked. I'd say behind shortstop, it's the most stacked position among the
yeah,
position players. Because yeah, it seemed like all the good outfielders moved to right field except for like Jackson Merrill, Julio Rodriguez, Jaron Duran, and like Mike Trout. Everyone
yeah.
else seems to be in right field. Um, but uh, but yes, so yeah, if you want to check out the other list before this, go to the 2025 positional rankings playlist on the Above Replacement Radio YouTube channel. And for context, we're talking about what we think these players will do in 2025. And going based off past performance a little bit, but as context for what we think they will do in 2025. So we'll look at some more underlying numbers like average exit velocity, barrel rate, strikeout rate, walk rate, whiff rate, chase rate, stuff like that, that kind of points to their underlying trends and how that will maybe transfer over to performance and how it can transfer over to their potential. And then lastly, we know that Anthony Santander is probably going to be a left fielder for the Blue Jays this year, but because we did the left field list before he signed and he was, sort of a projected right fielder before that signing, we're going to stick him in the right field list uh, because he since we didn't include him in the left field list, we should have him on considered for some lists and not completely forget about him altogether. If we do end up putting him on these lists, so yeah, that should do it for all the housekeeping. Who do you have at number 10 on the top 10 right fielders for 2025?
Yeah, that's right. So on this list, for context, I have five returners to the right field list. Additionally, two people that were on on different lists from last year. I actually have my number one left fielder and my number one center fielder from last year on the right field list, just to show you how stacked the position is. So starting in at number 10 is one of my newcomers, a guy who had a really solid rookie season. I argue probably should have won Rookie of the Year, but regardless, he performed very well. A 4-win season at age 24. Talking about Colton Cowser from the Baltimore Orioles. Started out very strong in April, finished strong in September, and in between, we found him with a 13.6% barrel rate, a 768 OPS, additionally 11 outs above average. He did largely play left field last year, but he is going to be switching to right field this year, according to the Fangraphs roster resource, with Tyler O'Neill coming in for Baltimore. I really like what I saw out of him last year. The offense was, I would say, I mean, it was good. It wasn't outstanding, on an overall basis, right? He was league average for OBP, above league average for slugging, and overall finish with an OPS plus, or a weighted runs created plus, in the 120s. So very solid. But on top of that, you saw good base running. You saw elite defense, also elite arm strength. He had 96th percentile arm strength and average throwing speed of 93.1 miles per hour. So, I mean, a very good all around season. You also saw a low chase rate out of him. You saw a decently high walk rate. He was hitting the ball very well. And then also, a 30% fly ball rate. That's always something that I like to see. He wasn't pulling it that often, but I think that's something that he could improve upon this coming year. Cowser was one of just 15 hitters in 2024 to have a 93 mile per hour average exit velocity and a 20% whiff rate or lower on all fastballs. So four seamers, cutters, and sinkers. Only 14 other qualified hitters had a 93 mile per hour average exit velocity and a 20% whiff rate or lower. And that's minimum 1,000 fastballs seen total. And that's obviously the pitches you're going to see the most of. I liked what I saw out of him there. So for me, it was enough to keep him on the list. This is a very talented list, like we mentioned. Colton Cowser is number 10 for me going into his age 25 season and his second full season.
Yeah, I'm gonna match you on that because I also have Colton Cowser at my number 10, as my number 10 right fielder for 2025. He is heading into his age 25 season, coming off a Rookie of the Year runner-up campaign. I also believe he should have won this past year, but alas, he also ranked fifth among current right fielders in F4 last year, and he led all primary corner outfielders in outs above average in 2024. That's left fielders and right fielders where he had the most outs above average in 2024. And that was also while putting up a 123 OPS plus. Um, you know, very productive on both ends. He was 62nd percentile in expected WOBA, 69th percentile in expected slugging, and 90th percentile in barrel rate. Um, and yeah, he showed great signs in his rookie year. I don't really, I'm kind of waiting to fully buy in on him. But if he kind of repeats success, he probably goes up this list. And yeah, I'm definitely interested in seeing where he goes from here because, with that exit velocity, barrel rate, uh, and with some reduction in strikeout rate, he could really, be an elite player, or at least has the potential to be an elite player. So yeah, Colton Cowser's my number 10. Who's your number 9?
Yeah, number nine, I'm going from a current Oriole to a former one, guy who just left this offseason in free agency within the division. Talking about Anthony Santander. He might be playing left field this year, but for the purpose of making sure that we acknowledge him, he's going on the right field list because he did play there primarily last year in Baltimore. 44 home run season, a really solid, you know, contract year for Anthony Santander, and the all the underlying numbers followed, right? A 445 expected slugging, an 11.7% barrel rate. That expected slugging might seem low, and that's because Anthony Santander pulled I believe 39% of his fly balls last year, which was the best out of anyone that I had on this list. And that's gonna probably take down a bit of your expected numbers because of the way that they work. That's a whole other thing. Other than that, he also, for a guy that hit 44 home runs last year, makes very good contact. He whiffed 20% of the time, struck out only 19.4% of the time, both of them well below the major league average. The defense was passable. Only a -2 outs above average. It's not great, but we've certainly seen worse out of plenty of guys. A 33% fly ball rate. I like any power hitter that has a fly ball rate that's higher than their ground ball rate, and that's exactly what Anthony Santander did last year. And he's come very close to doing that in the last few years as well. So it's something that I think can be very sustainable. I like the fit in Toronto. I think it makes sense. According to Statcast, he would actually hit more home runs playing every game in Toronto than he would have in Baltimore, which is not something that you see a whole lot from lefties. But he would have hit 37 in Baltimore, 39 in Toronto. Anthony Santander and Yordan Alvarez were the only qualifying hitters to be 75th percentile in 2024 or higher in both whiff rate and barrel rate. So two skill sets that aren't always mutually exclusive. It was only those two that were able to do it last year. So Santander is number 9 on my list.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, as you kind of implied there, like usually you have to sacrifice one with the other.
Mm-hmm.
Um and yes, Anthony Santander was able to do both very well. I also have Anthony Santander at number 9. He is heading into his age 30 season. He ranked eighth among current right fielders in F4 last year, and he ranked seventh over the last 2 years. He has a 127 OPS plus over the last 2 years, and he ranks fifth in OPS, fourth in weighted runs created plus, and fourth in slugging among current qualified right fielders over the last 2 years. Um, and as you kind of talked about that, pulled fly ball rate out of 87 hitters with 400 plus batted balls last year, Anthony Santander had the second highest rate of batted balls being pulled fly balls, and also out of 94 hitters with 750 plus batted balls over the last 2 years, he has the fourth highest rate of batted balls being pulled fly balls. So yeah, so that kind of, he has historically kind of outperformed his expected metrics a little bit, or at least he did last year. And that's not necessarily something to worry about because his pulled fly ball rate is so high that he is able to outperform his expected metrics without luck being necessarily that much of a factor. And the last thing with Anthony Santander is you can kind of rely on him to stay on the field, or at least historically you have been. He's played over 150 games each of the last 3 years. So, yeah, his ability to stay on the field, I think that's part of what um, got him a 5-year deal. Is he's not someone who's necessarily the talent of someone who gets a 5-year deal, but since he stays on the field, I think that's and he's also only heading into his age 30 season. I think that's why the Blue Jays signed him up for 5 years. Um, but yeah, Anthony Santander, also my number nine. Who is your number eight?
Yeah, my number eight is one of the more uh, outstanding breakouts that we saw last year, both in unexpectedness and just the quality of play that we saw out of him down the stretch last summer. I'm talking about Lawrence Butler from the Athletics. Who balled out last year, especially late in the season, had a 3 home run game, I believe, heading into the All-Star break and kind of carried that momentum throughout the rest of the season. He ended up slashing 262, 317, 490 for an 807 OPS, and doing much stronger from July on. We saw him hit the ball very well and kind of all the essential qualities that you want to see in a power hitter, right? He was hitting the ball with an average exit velocity above 91 miles an hour, barreling the ball over 10% of the time. The bat speed was 74 miles per hour, nearly averaging a fast swing, which is really solid, something that I love to see. Strikeout rate wasn't actually too bad. It was 23.9%, which is a little bit above the major league average, but it got better as the season went on. I'll get to that later. Not only that, but we also saw him with a 35% sweet spot rate. That's something that, combos really well with power is, hitting the ball at the optimal angles, a 26% line drive rate and a 26.3% fly ball rate, both excellent numbers for Lawrence Butler. From March through June, he had a 30.7% strikeout rate, and from July through September, that dropped to 20.6%. It was a 10.1% drop in strikeout rate between those two spans. And in that same span, his barrel rate went from 6.7% to 12.8%. So he was hitting the ball more and hitting it better. And as a result, you saw one of the best players in the second half of last season. I'm very intrigued to see what kind of impact playing at Sutter Health Park will do for him. It's kind of all unknown at this point, but the PCL usually tends to be very offense heavy. Of course, you're going to see major league pitching and not AAA pitching there, but it's something that I'll be watching for next season. Lawrence Butler had an outstanding season last year, and he is debuting on my list here, and he is my number 8 right fielder.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I forgot to mention my number 10 and number 9 were both newcomers, Colton Cowser and
Yeah, Santander
yeah,
was my number 10 last year.
yeah, Colton Cowser and Anthony Santander were both not on my list last year. And at number 8, I have another newcomer. I have Teoscar Hernandez. Um, he is heading into his age 32 season. He ranked 7th among current right fielders in F4 last year and ranked 6th over the last 3 years. He's put up 530 plus plate appearances and an OPS plus above 125 every non-Seattle year since 2020. I think there's kind of a curse in Seattle, so I think non-Seattle years is a justified metric. But yeah, every each of the last 5 years, except for his year with the Mariners, he's put up 530 plus plate appearances and an OPS plus above 125. He is averaging -4 outs above average per year since 2022, which does bring him down this list. But his consistent quality hitting gets him onto it. If you can bank on someone being at least 25% above average at the plate every year, that is really something good to go off of. And last year it it played a great factor. I think he was in the 130s, and even though he had -9 outs above average, he was still able to be I think a 3.5 win player according to Fangraphs. So yeah, Teoscar Hernandez is my number 8. Who do you have at number 7?
At number seven, everyone from here on out is not a newcomer. I only had two newcomers on this list. My number seven was actually number 10 on my center field list last year. I forgot that I put him, but I absolutely did. And it seemed like it paid off, despite the fact that he had never played a major league game when I put him on this list. I'm talking about Jackson Chorio from the Milwaukee Brewers. Had an outstanding second half of the season, and I think really showed why at 20 years old he was viewed as such a highly touted prospect as a teenager. Because we really kind of saw everything out of him last year. A 2020 season at age 20, that's, obviously pretty awesome. 21 home runs, 22 stolen bases, 5 outs above average, and also 97th percentile sprint speed, nearly 30 feet per second on average at 29.7 feet per second. So, I mean, he was good at everything last year, right? I mean, we saw 85th percentile or higher in batting run value, base running run value, and fielding run value out of Chorio last year. And much like Lawrence Butler, he's a guy that started out slow in the first half and really figured himself out as the season went on. 43.5% of Chorio's batted balls from March through June were line drives and fly balls, which is exactly what you want to be hitting. That number went to 51.9% from July through September. So it went from 43.5% to 51.9%, an 8.4% increase in line drive and fly ball rates. The hard hit rate on line drives and fly balls over the span also went from 48.1% to 57%. So not only was he hitting more line drives and fly balls, he was hitting them with much more authority. And that's how you saw the results that you saw out of him later in the season. Certainly there's much to improve on, but I mean, going into age 21, he's already set the bar so high for himself. And he has the potential to climb this list quite significantly next year. I think it's interesting that like I put Wyatt Langford number 1 on my left field list, Jackson Troyo number 7 on my right field list. I think it really just speaks more to how stacked right field is, because I think if Jackson Chorio was on the left field list, we'd see him at least in the top 4. Maybe I'd even put him number 1. This is a very, very good player with a lot of upside going into age 21. And I'm very excited to see what it looks like next year. He's my number 7 on this list.
Yeah, yeah. My number seven, and this may be a take here. But I think I'm just kind of thinking more conservatively about this player this year, considering a variety of factors. I have Ronald Acuna Jr. at number seven,
Mhm.
as for right fielders in 2025. He was my number one right fielder last year. And yeah, kind of breaking it down, he's heading into his age 27 season. He only played 49 games last year. I think most people know the story. He tore his ACL in 2021, and then he tore his other ACL in 2024, and somehow had a MVP season between those two. And yeah, with Ronald Acuna Jr. and his 2025, it is hard not to think about his 2022 season when analyzing what he did, what he's going to do this year, because that 2022 season was the year after he tore his ACL in 2021. He kind of like this upcoming year, he started the year late, eventually went DH, and then eventually played. And, he had like he posted a 112 OPS plus in that year. He wasn't a bad player, but he wasn't, at that quite that Ronald Acuna Jr. level. And I think there's potential that we kind of see a similar year this year. But yeah, regarding trends from last year in the short time that he had on the field last year, his strikeout rate and average exit velocity went back near career averages. It did seem kind of weird that his strikeout rate, um, was cut in half from 2022 to 2023. It seemed like, maybe that's not exactly what he's going to do long term, and that was kind of proven in 2024, as it went back to, his strikeout rate went from 11% to over 20%. And yeah, those strikeout rate numbers and average exit velocity numbers were 100th and 97th percentile in 2023. So they were a big part of why he was good in 2023. So yeah, those being back to normal kind of brings him back to below that MVP tier, I guess, if those kind of remain at that level. Um and and yeah, he's also supposed to start the year on the IL this year, so I probably have guys above him who might be worse on a rate basis, but will have a more productive season overall. You know, if I might have guys who I think will have a better season in 150 games as opposed to Ronald Acuna Jr.'s maybe 130 games. So with him starting on the IL, that kind of brings him down the list because I think he'll have less time to get the overall results. So yeah, Ronald Acuna Jr. He's my number seven. I still think he'll have a good year this year, but he's my number seven on this list of very very talented players. Who do you have at number six?
Yeah, that is certainly a take to have him at number seven. But I'm really not that far off from you on that because I have Ronald Acuna Jr. as my number six on this same list. I think a large part of it is simply because he's eyeing an early May return, so you're automatically taking out 1 month of production from him, and on this list, missing a month guaranteed, means there's going to be a lot of people that naturally are probably going to surpass you in terms of total value produced throughout the year. But Ronald Acuna Jr., I still think is a very talented player. Obviously, we did see a quite major step down from 2023 in the time that we did see him on the field last year, but a lot of the essentials were still there. The average exit velocity, although it dropped 2.5 miles per hour, was still at 92.2 miles per hour. The expected WOBA was 350. The average bat speed was among the top in all of Major League Baseball, 76.8 mile per hour. The chase rate was also way down at 21%. It actually dropped from last year, which was very nice. But obviously we did certainly see a regression. Ronald Acuna Jr. saw 65.4% total fastballs in 2024. 65% of pitches he saw were fastballs, whether they be four seamers, sinkers, or cutters. And that was the second highest rate among the 372 hitters to see at least 750 total pitches. His whiff rate rose on fastballs, rose nearly 13% from 2023, and his average exit velocity went from 94 miles per hour to 90 miles an hour. It went down 4 miles an hour between the 2 years. So there are certainly plenty of reasons to justify putting five people above him at his position alone, despite how talented he is and despite what he did in 2023. But you have to justify it somehow, and there's plenty of ways to do so between the drop in production last year, the time that he's going to miss this year. I could still see him putting up a 5, maybe 6 win season um, if he performs to his peak. And I think that would justify putting him at six, but that's where I have him right now. So you and I are pretty similar on Ronald Acuna Jr. Not exactly the same place, but we have the same idea when evaluating him in 2025.
Yeah, right. Like if someone were to just glance at a list and be like, how can you put, Ronald Acuna Jr. at number six? But given the context of everything and coming
Mhm.
off an ACL surgery and missing time, it does make a lot more sense. And yeah, like I'm sure heading into 2026, he'll probably be higher on this list. I would expect that. Um, but uh, but yeah, for 2025, like yeah, I kind of I'm thinking conservatively, on a Acuna scale. I'm thinking conservatively with him. My number six is actually Fernando Tatis Jr. He was my number four last year. But re regarding that, I probably don't think that differently of him this year. It's just that there's two guys above him who weren't on this list last year. So like if those guys were at the positions as they were projected to be at last year, Fernando Tatis Jr. would be number four again. So I kind of think similarly about Fernando Tatis Jr. this year as I did last year, and that's probably going to be reflected in the ARR top 50, or the Gionta 50 specifically. Um, but Fernando Tatis Jr. is heading into his age 26 season. He missed 60 games last year, but still ranks sixth among current right fielders in F4 over the last 2 years. And yeah, Fernando Tatis Jr. is extremely hard to evaluate. He was in the 92nd percentile in barrel rate last year and 96th percentile or higher in average exit velocity and all expected categories. However, he underperformed those expected numbers for a second year in a row due to a low rate of fly balls being pulled. Um, So yeah, so looking at his Savant page, you'd expect him to be an elite hitter, but and he was still a very good hitter, but not necessarily at the level you'd expect him to be at based on those underlying metrics. It's just he does not pull very many of his fly balls, and he, because some of his best contact is hit to deeper parts of the ballpark, he doesn't get rewarded as much for how hard he hits the ball. Um, and he also his defensive value also decreased from 2023 to 2024. Um, he had a +2 defensive run value um, in 2024, but it was +12 in 2023, and he won a Gold Glove in that year. He also went from 29 stolen bases to 11 from 2023 to 2024. Ratio wise, he went from stealing a base every 4.9 games to every 9.3 games. But yeah, overall, I expect kind of similar hitting statistics. He was at a 130 OPS plus last year. I kind of expected to be around that level this year. And I also expect some improvements in defense and base running. I think he's going to find a balance between his defense and base running in 2023 and his defense and base running in 2024. And yeah, I think that would put him around like 5 this season. So that puts him at number 6 for me. But yeah, who do you have at number 5?
Number five, this is where I put Fernando Tatis Jr. So like Acuna, you and I are one spot off on him. Uh, Yeah, I mean, I think I share a lot of the same sentiment that you have. We know what is there. We're just waiting for it to all come together, right? I mean, all the puzzle pieces they've been laid on the table. They just have to be put in place, right? The expected numbers are there. He had 99th percentile hard hit rate last year, a very good bat speed and squared up rate. Usually those are very mutually exclusive. You can't have, if you're going to have one, you have to sacrifice the other. Tatis, had very good metrics on both, which is awesome. Not only is he hitting the ball hard, but he's hitting it just about as hard as he can, given the high bat speed, which is hard to do. Even there are plenty of guys that I don't. Not even Aaron Judge does it to the same degree that Tatis does, um, which is just saying more about Tatis than it is about Judge. Yeah, the defensive value did go down a bit. Just to understand why you're not seeing the results in Chris, you laid it out for me. I'm just going to put more specific numbers on it. In 2024, Tatis had a 97.6 mile per hour average exit velocity on line drives and fly balls, the seventh highest among the 179 hitters with at least 150 line drives and fly balls. However, 36.2% of them were hit to the opposite field, which was a 13% increase over his mark from 2021, which was the last, really, really great season we saw out of Fernando Tatis Jr., which really just goes to show even when you have his kind of power, when you're hitting the ball to the opposite field that much, you are kind of missing out on a lot of your power potential, especially in Petco Park as a right-handed hitter. And he's still able to muscle a lot of them over the fence, which is great. But still, there's a lot more potential out there when he pulls the ball, and that's something that he needs to get back at doing if he wants to return to his 2021 form. Uh, and that's kind of the thing that's keeping him from being number top 3 on this list for me, I would say. But I'm waiting for that potential to be there. I'm waiting to see it. I think it can still happen. But for now, he's number 5, largely because of that opposite field percentage on the power hits.
Right, right. And adding to that, like people might wonder, why would hitting it to the opposite field be worse than pulling it? Obviously they're both shorter ends of the ballpark. Usually with players in general, they're more likely to, kind of pull it down the line than hit it opposite field down the line. Like, just kind of observationally, when players hit it to the opposite field, it's usually to the, I guess, deeper end of the opposite field, whether that be right center field or left center field or closer to those parts of the ballpark. So, if you look at someone like Isaac Paredes and how he pulls the ball, it's, right down the line a lot of the time. So that's more common than hitting it, opposite field down the line all the time, unless you're like maybe Bo Bichette or something like that. I know he had crazy opposite field numbers
Mm-hmm.
at least 2 years ago, but that's kind of the explanation on that. My number 5 is I'm sort of jumping the gun on Jackson Chorio.
Yeah,
Uh,
I was waiting for you to say him.
he was not on any of my lists last year. Good on you for putting him top 10 center fielders. Even though I guess he didn't technically play center field, but he was projected at the time to play center field. But yeah, he had a really good year last year. He finished third in the Rookie of the Year, and he got MVP votes as well. He's heading into his age 21 season. He ranked sixth among current right fielders in F4 last year, but he ranked third in his final 81 games. In those 81 games, he hit 309 with a 903 OPS and ranked 12th among all position players in F4. And among 146 qualified hitters in that span, his average ranked ninth and his OPS ranked 11th. And out of 153 hitters to see 1,000 plus pitches in that span, Chorio's expected batting average ranked eighth and expected WOBA ranked 17th. And yeah, if he like I've said before, talking about players who had really, really good second halves or maybe last 3 months of the season, in Chorio's case, it's last like 3+ months of the season. I value that more with players that are younger. We kind of saw that with Bobby Witt Jr. last year. Like he had a really good back half of 2023, and that transferred to, an MVP level 2024. With someone like Chorio, he kind of got his feet wet in the MLB for those first 3 months of the year. It was sort of trying to figure things out, and he did figure things out towards the end of that season. And I think that can really transfer over to 2025, and especially as someone who's only 21 years old. So yeah, I think if he keeps up what he did in his final 81 games, I think he is a perennial MVP candidate, considering what he also does on defense and on the bases. So I'm kind of going based off of that potential for this number 5 pick, and what he did in that final half of 2024. And yeah, I'm excited to see what he can do in 2025. Who do you have at number 4?
Yeah, I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that our 1 through 4 is exactly the same, both of the players we have listed in the order. But hey, I could be wrong. Number 4, I have Corbin Carroll, who is my number 1 left fielder last year. He is now expected to play right field for the Diamondbacks, and it was a weird year for him for sure. Definitely a down year overall in pretty much every facet of offense, at least. His batting average went down by over 50 points. His OBP went down 40 points. His slugging went down quite considerably. So, it was definitely not the year that we were hoping for, but I still think that he is much closer to his 2023 self than he is his overall 2024 self. And I mean, really, it was the tale of two seasons for him in general, right? I mean, then from March through June, he had a 76 weighted runs created plus. From July through September, he had a 139 weighted runs created plus. And I think we can expect something a lot closer to that 139 this coming season. It was a year of a lot of changes for him. First of all, all the essentials were still there, right? Corbin Carroll had the best base running run value in the league with 12 runs created. He had 96th percentile sprint speed. The outs above average was 8 this year. It was very positive, much like it was in 2023. I know that Fangraphs and Baseball Savant kind of disagree on him defensively, but he has been very well liked on Baseball Savant for these last couple of years. Much like Fernando Tatis Jr., he is a guy that has a high bat speed and also a high squared up rate. So the thing about squared up rate is that it's when you hit a ball at the 80% of the possible exit velocity given bat speed and pitch speed. So when you have a higher bat speed, your 80th percentile exit velocity tends to be a lot higher than, say, if you had like a Luis Arraez bat speed, then you'd have to hit the ball like 86 miles an hour for it to be squared up, which is obviously very easy to do. But Corbin Carroll is able to do both. He had 74th percentile or higher bat speed and squared up rate. The chase rate was very good. All the strikeout and walk numbers were very good. But it was some major midseason adjustments in terms of his batted balls that really did it in for me. His fly ball rate went from 16.7% from March through June to 28% from July through September. And his pull rate also went from 35% to 40.9%. So I think those two things played a major role in that increase in weighted runs created plus between the two sides of the season. And, I fully expect to see something very close to what we saw out of his Rookie of the Year campaign in 2023 this coming season. So I'm expecting more big things from Corbin Carroll last year. I know that he had a rather disappointing season coming off of being number one on both of our left field lists, but I'm very excited to see a bounce back year from him in 2025.
Yeah, I think that um defensive discrepancy or the discrepancy in outs above average and Fangraphs defensive runs above average can be explained by also the Statcast arm value that is
Yes.
pinned on him. Um,
Yep.
because I'm pretty sure that the Statcast numbers and Fangraphs numbers are like lock and key, like they Fangraphs goes off of the Statcast numbers. It's just his arm value is -3, or was -3 last year, and I think it was -6 the year before that, if I'm correct. Yeah, -6 the year before that. So his outs of like his range is really good. It's just his arm is not, which brings down his defensive run value. And also he's been playing mostly corner outfield, so I guess that does also bring his like Fangraphs defensive runs above average down as well. Um, my number 4 is also Corbin Carroll. He was my number 1 left fielder last year. And he is heading into his age 24 season. He ranked fourth among current right fielders in F4 last year, and he ranks fourth over the last 2 years. He had a really, really bad first 2 months of the season, as you kind of talked about. Uh, really bad first 2 months of the season in 2024. Then he ranked 11th among all position players in F4 in his final 98 games. And in those final 98 games, he basically did what he did in his rookie season. Uh, he hit 256, slugged 522 with an 871 OPS. His OPS in those 98 games was within 3 points of his 2023 OPS. His WOBA was within 2 points of his 2023 WOBA, and his expected WOBA in those final 98 games was the exact same as his 2023 expected WOBA. So yeah, like in those final 98 games, he was pretty much the exact same as he was in that rookie season, where not only did he win Rookie of the Year, but he was also very high up in the MVP votes. So yeah, I mean, like he showed that he can get back to that level. I'm trying not to put the Michael Harris arc against him because he is completely following the Michael Harris arc.
That is a great point.
He For those unaware of the parallel, Michael Harris also won Rookie of the Year. That was in 2022. Then in 2023, like Carroll in 2024, Michael Harris had a really rough first 2 months of the year and ended with a really good 4 months of the year. However, unfortunately, Michael Harris last year only put up 2 wins above replacement and did not have a great year. If Corbin Carroll follows that arc, he will have a very average season this year. But I think he breaks the Michael Harris arc this year, and I think he has not the 2023 level season, but I think it will be closer to 2023 than his 2024 season. So yeah, I love the potential out of Corbin Carroll this year. Who do you have at number 3?
Yeah, I gotta rock the touch screen on my laptop right now because there's a cat on my keyboard and I'm unable to use the trackpad function. So, number 3, I have Kyle Tucker, who is trading his uniform this year. He got traded from the Astros to the Cubs this offseason. And man, do I wish we didn't see an injury out of him last year because he was unbelievable in the 339 plate appearances as I have to move my face to see the plate appearance number on Baseball Savant. But I mean, if you look at the Baseball Savant page, I know that I hate using the sliders just as the singular tool of evaluating a player, but I mean, you really wish you could have seen the not just the preview version, but like the actual he qualified and this is what percentile he's in type of thing. But he was unbelievable at basically every stretch. He upped his barrel rate by 2%. He upped his average exit velocity by 1 mile an hour, which doesn't seem like much, but he also, oh boy, okay. Um, I'm working with some distractions here, but He also dropped his ground ball rate by 11.5%, going from 36.6% to 27.1% last year. He upped his fly ball rate to be over 40%, kind of just maximizing the power that he has. Which is just awesome to see last year. And more importantly, it was a bit of a down. It was no, not a down year, but another year where he just absolutely crushed four seamers, which is really all he's done for the last few years. Throughout the 2020s, Kyle Tucker has a 10.5 run value per 100 against four seam fastballs, which means for every 100 four seamers he has seen since 2020, he is producing on average 10 runs on a rate basis, and that is the second highest among the 436 hitters with at least 200 plate appearances ending on four seamers throughout the 2020s. I'm very excited to see what he does in Wrigley. He isn't necessarily a pull heavy guy. On fly balls specifically, he does it, but not to an extreme degree, which I think will benefit him in Wrigley because pulling it is maybe the worst thing you could do there, believe it or not. I know it's not super common, but you want to go like more gaps. You want to go left center, right center. Than you want to do pulling the ball because of the little indents that they have there and in both of the corners. So I'm very excited to see what Kyle Tucker does this year. Also, the defense went back to normal. He had a weird down year on defense in 2023, was a little more average there in 2024. So I have him at my number 3 spot, and it was just an outstanding year for him.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I also have Kyle Tucker at number 3. He was my number 3 last year as well. He is heading into his age 28 season, and he's heading into a contract year as well. And despite missing 84 games, he ranked third among current right fielders in F4 in 2024, which is pretty unbelievable to be top 3 at the position in F4 when you miss 84 games. And
Yeah.
he also ranks fifth among current right fielders over the last 2 years in F4. And yeah, as you mentioned, he dropped his ground ball rate 11.5 percentage points from 2023 to 2024 and increased his fly ball rate by 8.6 percentage points from 2023 to 2024. And part of that had to do with his OPS plus going from 142 to 181. I found interesting with Kyle Tucker. I guess maybe going a little bit against his case is he had 23 home runs in 2024, but only 16.7 expected home runs based on the average ballpark. However, I'm not really worried about much of a drop off playing for the Cubs because he had uh, he had more projected home runs in only two ballparks over Wrigley Field in 2024, meaning Wrigley Field had the third most projected home runs for Kyle Tucker based on where he's hitting his fly balls in 2024. Also with Kyle Tucker, he went 11 for 11 on stolen bases in 2024 and would steal 21 bases over a 150 game pace if he ended up playing that many games last year. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what we see in a full season of Kyle Tucker. If he, I'd be surprised if the fly ball rate and stays that high and the ground ball rate stays that low. But if they remain like better than his 2023 rates, I see potential for a truly great season from him. Potentially MVP level for him, or MVP runner up for him, I guess, if Ohtani's pitching this year. But yeah, Kyle Tucker gets my number 3 spot. Who do you have at number 2?
Yeah, at number 2, I have very unsurprising pick, I guess. Talking about Juan Soto from the New York Mets. He just signed a $765 million contract for 13 years to cross town, go from the Bronx to Queens. So very exciting to see, the debut season, a much anticipated debut season for the Mets. We saw so much improvement out of Juan Soto, which is crazy to say given how talented we already knew he was. But he did so many of the things that I've been waiting to see from him. He lowered his ground ball rate. It went from 51.9% to 44.7%. And both of those increases went equally to his line drive rate and his fly ball rate. He upped his pull rate from 35.5% in 2023 to 42.3% in 2024, the highest pull rate that he's had in his career by quite a wide margin. So it was very cool to see him finally do those things. And on top of that, everything else stayed the same. The walk rate was 18.1%. He had a 419 on base percentage, yet another season over 400 with that. Another guy that hits the ball very hard with a fast swing rate, 94th percentile bat speed and squared up rate, like I mentioned, very hard to do. 98th to 100th percentile in basically every hard hit related category, whether it be the expected numbers, barrel rate, hard hit rate, whatever. Career highs in expected, average exit velocity and hard hit rate. Also, very good in strikeout rate again. And even better, when he was hitting those fly balls, those line drives, the things that I've wanted to see more out of from him that we saw this year, he was doing them very well. He barreled 50.8% of his fly balls in 2024. The best percent that he's had in a full season, and his career average barrel rate on fly balls going into this year was 35.5%. He made it at 50% this year. So amazingly a lot of improvement that we saw out of him last year. Very unsurprising that we saw him end the season with a 988 OPS and 41 home runs, and very much looking forward to seeing what he can do in Queens, although there is one right fielder that I see is better than him.
Yeah, and yeah, it's a very high standard to live up to. My number two is also Juan Soto. So yeah, I think you're right about 1 through 4 being the same order. I was hesitant to agree because I feel like we've said that before, and then
Yeah,
there's been a there's been a someone
but this one feels very like, come on, it's right there.
it's on a tee for us. But yeah, Juan Soto is my number two. He was my number two right fielder last year. He is heading into his age 26 season, and he ranked second among current right fielders in F4 last year, and he ranked second over the last 2 years. And he's coming off career highs in wins above replacement, home runs, total bases, average exit velocity, and barrel rate, and also fly ball rate. And he set non-COVID season career highs in slugging, OPS plus, expected slugging, and expected WOBA. And he was top 4 in all of baseball last year in on-base percentage, slugging, and OPS. And he was 100th percentile in expected WOBA, expected batting average, and walk rate. And also over the last 3 years, his defensive run value has gone from -17 to -7 to -1. So, it's shown that it's gone from disastrous to kind of average, which is really, I mean, like, it's a luxury to have him as an average defender considering the offense that he provides. If he stays at that average level. And yeah, like he fixed a lot of what people were concerned about with him in 2024, or what a lot of what people were concerned about him before 24. He fixed that in 2024. Whether that be his defense or his ground ball rate, and that allowed him to have the best season of his career. I think that some of those things were holding him back. And, he hadn't had a season, he hadn't had an 8-win season before. And I think that either had to do with his ground ball rate being too high or which, brought down his offensive numbers or, his defense being too poor. He fixed both of those and that allowed him to put together, uh, an MVP finalist season, and have the best season of his career. I will say, like, I think regression should not be too much of a surprise considering how drastic some of his improvements were in 2024. Like, I could see maybe his ground ball rate sneaking up a little bit or his defense going down a little bit. But I still see him having a really, really good season in 2025. And, regression isn't something I can necessarily fall back on, considering how young he is. But yeah, Juan Soto is my number two. Who do you have at number one?
So at number one, very unsurprising here. He was our number one center fielder last year. He was our number one player in baseball last year. And all he did was prove us to be completely right, winning his second MVP and putting up his third season with 50 plus home runs. Talking about Aaron Judge. I mean, have you heard of this guy, Chris? I mean, he's He is so big.
He's pretty yeah, he's big. Like I'd love to see maybe a side by side comparison of him and like Rob Gronkowski maybe.
I was gonna say the Empire State Building, but that works too, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I mean like and you have like look at the staying power of like his last name's Judge. Like imagine a section of like people in like kind of old school like Revolutionary War era
Yeah.
like wigs and just like saying like we're the judge's chamber. Yeah.
Hmm.
Like that would be really cool.
Aaron Judge's numbers are just so inhumane. It is hilarious to look at his, like the way that people talked about Mike Trout's baseball reference page in the late 20, like the late 29 2010s, the early 2020s, with all of the bold and all of the big numbers on his baseball reference page. That's how I feel about Aaron Judge's baseball savant page. Because it is just so hilarious to see all the red every single year. And it's not just red, but it's like unthinkable, right? I mean, an average exit velocity of 95% or higher each of the last 4 seasons, along with an expected batting average above 285, an expected slugging above nearly 600 at least. In fact, an expected slugging in the 700s in each of the last 3 seasons. It's a complete joke. On top of that, the walk rate's gone up very nicely, around close to 20% in the last 2 years. One of my favorite Aaron Judge stat, I think, is that he is coming off of his fourth season with 200 plus batted balls and a barrel rate above 25%. No one else in the StatCast era has done that once. He has done it 4 times. There is nobody like him in the game today. He might be, I mean, in terms of what we've seen in a peak, he might be having the best peak for a right-handed hitter since like legitimately World War II. Like it's like it might beat out Mike Trout in terms of just pure offense. It might beat out peak Albert Pujols. It's them too in terms of the OPS plus numbers, in terms of the league adjustment stats, the ballpark adjusted stuff. It's Aaron Judge in a ballpark with nobody else, and that's what we've seen throughout the last 3 years. He's shown us no reason to believe that he can't do it again in 2025. For that reason, he is my number one right fielder.
Yeah, I mean, Albert Pujols never surpassed an OPS plus of 200, and Judge has done that twice. So
Mm-hmm.
I think there's definitely a case to be made. And yeah, with Trout, I don't think he surpassed 200 either. Um, yeah, just on a hitting front.
Yeah, I'm not talking about just pure offense, pure value. I'm talking just offense straight up.
Yeah, and hitting specifically. Um, my yeah, my number one is also Aaron Judge, who was also my number one center fielder last year and also my uh number one player in baseball for 2024. And yeah, good on us for getting that right. A lot of people had Ronald Acuna Jr. Last year as the number one player in baseball. Aaron Judge was better. And Aaron Judge is heading into his age 33 season. It's not really slowing him down yet though. He led all players at any position in F4 last year, and he leads all outfielders in F4 over the last 2 years. And then he also leads all position players over the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 years. And despite having an incredible career before last year, he set career highs in average on base percentage, slugging, OPS, OPS plus, expected WOBA, walks, total bases, doubles, and wins above replacement in 2024. And to top that all off, he set a career low in strikeout rate. And he also led the league in on base percentage, slugging, OPS, OPS plus, walks, total bases, and wins above replacement. And he was 100th percentile in expected slugging, expected WOBA, average exit velocity, barrel rate, hard hit rate, and walk rate. So yeah, if if that doesn't tell you at all, he's the best hitter in baseball and is not too much of a detriment on defense. So yeah, he gets the number one spot on this list. So there's
Yeah.
really not much you have to say with Aaron Judge.
It's kind of
He's the best.
self-explanatory.
Yeah, he's the best right fielder in baseball, and I think the best, or he's definitely, if not the best exclusive position player in baseball,
Mhm.
he's top two. Um, but
Exclusive position player.
yeah,
What a filter.
yeah, exactly.
He's the best
Um,
position player that doesn't also pitch.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, that does it for those lists. Do you want to go through your 10 through 1?
Absolutely. So number 10, I had Colton Cowser. Number 9, Anthony Santander. Number 8, Lawrence Butler. Number 7, Jackson Churio. Number 6, Ronald Acuna Jr. Number 5, Fernando Tatis Jr. Number 4, Corbin Carroll. Number 3, Kyle Tucker. Number 2, Juan Soto. And number 1, Aaron Judge. Teoscar Hernandez, I'm so sorry. I really wanted to put you. This is just such a good list, and unfortunately, one person had to miss the cut. I'm sorry that it had to be you. Um, I hope that you prove me wrong. Also, honorable mention Dylan Cruz. Just couldn't find a spot for him this year, but I have very big expectations for him as well.
Yeah. My number 10 was Colton Cowser, number 9, Anthony Santander, number 8, Teoscar Hernandez, number 7, Ronald Acuna Jr., number 6, Fernando Tatis Jr., number 5, Jackson Chorio, number 4, Corbin Carroll, number 3, Kyle Tucker, number 2, Juan Soto, number 1, Aaron Judge. Shout out to Lawrence Butler. He was my number 11. And then right behind him, Wilyer Abreu and Matt Wallner. I was considering as well.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, those were my 10. Um, so yeah, the that does it for all position players
Yes.
for top 10s for 2025. Yeah, we will be doing starting pitchers next week, so be on the lookout for that. That's going to be